How to have fun, anytime, anywhere. Step 1. Go to ChumbaCasino.com.
ChumbaCasino.com. Got it.
Step 2. Collect your welcome bonus.
Come to Papa welcome bonus.
Step 3. Play hundreds of casino-style games for free.
That's a lot of games. All for free?
Step 4. Unleash your excitement.
Woohoo!
Chumba Casino has been delivering thrills for over a decade. So claim your free welcome bonus now and live the Chumba life. Visit ChumbaCasino.com.
VGW Group. No purchase necessary. Void where prohibited by law. See terms and conditions. 18+.
Welcome to another edition of Iconic Creators. I'm your host, Baxter Colburn. I want to say a huge thank you to those that continue to listen and have reached out showing their support for the show. It's been a lot of fun. This show was started as a passion project, as a journey for me, and to be able to have spoken to some amazing creators so far has been a really big joy of mine, truly. And today I've got another one. This is the third time here in a short period of time where I've spoken to somebody that I don't personally know, but know in the sense admirer of their work. We've talked on social media a couple of times, so that basically makes us best friends in the way that 2025 works, I think, right? If you're friends with somebody on Instagram, you basically are best friends in real life. So she's someone that caught my attention with the honesty, with the way that she loves to create content. She is a realtor in the Stevens Point, Wisconsin area. For those of you that don't know where that is, it's more central Wisconsin. And I'm sure she'll give us a lot more information about that as well. But I'm really excited to have Sarah Katterhenry on the show today. So Sarah, welcome to Iconic Creators. How are you today? I'm excited to have you. And it's interesting, right? I mean, because you work in real estate, and if I would have told you 5 years ago that you would also have to be a full-time marketing social media expert as well as sell people houses, would you have been like, oh yeah, that makes sense? Or would you have been like, absolutely not. What are you talking about?
Yeah, I don't know. You know how people used to ask the question of like, if you could do anything and money wasn't an object, what would you do? And my answer 5 years ago would have been blogger. And so in a way, that is kind of where I'm at, maybe not to the scale. And knowing what I know now of the online space, I don't know that that would still be my answer. But it's funny that I've taken some of those things from that career path that I used to admire so much. And I do that now. Now, I wouldn't have taken those things and put them hand in hand with real estate, but I guess I'm not terribly surprised that I do those things because I was always really interested in the online space and the influencing aspect of things. And I've always spent a lot of time on social media anyways. So I'm not very surprised that I'm here.
Fair enough. And that's always funny because I've worked with a lot of realtors, and that is always it's the two answers, right? One is like, obviously I saw the way the world was going, or those that were like, no, like it's exhausting. Like it's a second full-time job on top of just trying to do my normal job, which is buy and sell people's houses, right? Like that's an exhausting thing to do. But you have taken an interesting approach. If people follow you on Instagram, it's sp.happenings, which obviously I'm assuming stands for Stevens Point Happenings, right? Is kind of what we're going for there. You have 17,000 followers.
Yes.
I asked this of one of my guests recently. When you hear that number, it's not all about followers, but to essentially go from nothing to 17,000 for anybody is a big deal. Like what comes to your mind, or what do you think or feel when you hear that you have 17,000 people or 17,000 accounts that are following and care about what you're posting on a consistent basis?
I think that it's a little misleading, to be honest, because I've had my account for 3 years and 3.5 years now. And my growth happened between November of 2023 and April of 2024. And it's because I posted one reel and it went viral. And it was probably a 4-second reel. And the intention was not to go viral. It was just something that I saw. And it said something like, morning. I would say good morning, but I really wish that more families moving to central Wisconsin would find my account. And it has 1 million views. Like there's literally no value in it. There's nothing interesting about it. I'm not teaching. I'm not There's no information in it. That's all it is. And that's what brought my account to where it is today. And so I think when you see that number, you would think, oh, she's grown steady for 3 years. And that wasn't the case. And I think the other thing that's misleading about it is I actually sold more real estate when I had 2,000 followers than this past year when I had 16,000 followers. So to your point, it is not all about the followers. I also, I've heard a lot of people say this as they get larger followings, that they wish they could go back to when they had just a couple thousand followers. And I can see that because when I had 2,000 followers, 90% of them were local to Stevens Point, and it just felt a lot more manageable. It felt like when I ran into people in real life, I could actually put a name to a face. And as it gets bigger, that's harder to do. But as it gets bigger, that also opens the door for more opportunities. So I think it poses the question of what do you want to do with your following now, and what direction do you want to go in? So it certainly does change things, but it's incredible. It's a blessing to have that many people who are interested in what you're doing and supporting you. And I am also really lucky that my community has remained a really positive place, because I also know that as you get more eyes on your things, it can tend to lead to more negative attention. And thankfully, I haven't run into that quite yet. So,
and that's fascinating too. I mean, that's always a fascinating piece about social media, right? Is it takes one post, right, as it were, or sometimes it takes a couple, right? And a lot of people are like, oh, it's consistency over time. It's finding your niche. It's whatever it is, right? So being able to kind of capitalize on that a little bit. But I know what you're saying too, right? Like I don't do any paid advertising for my accounts. I don't do anything of that nature at all. I haven't bought my followers, anything, right? Like my account has steadily grown, but as you continue to grow, it does feel like sometimes it's almost like you grew up in a small town and then you went to college in the big city, right? You went to school in Milwaukee, right? You grew up in Stevens Point or whatever it is, right? Type of thing. And you're like, oh my gosh, like I don't know, I can't go to the grocery store and know 10 people anymore, right? I'm going to maybe know one in every 50 or 100 now. And you do lose that personal touch a little bit, right? But I think it all depends on what your goals are, what it is that you're trying to do. Obviously, selling real estate, you'd like to hope and think that when people are buying or selling a home, that you're going to be the first person they think of, right? That's generally the goal, I'd like to think, right, in real estate. But if not you, you want them to at least reach out and see if you might know the right person or whatever that might be, right? So, the followers are a tricky thing, right? Sometimes, right? Because you don't want it to let it define the success that you have, because social media is I'd like to say it's a quote unquote like invisible thing, right? Because you can't go to Instagram. There's not an Instagram city, right, to go into and be like, here are all my followers, right? It's like, it's real people, but it's a platform on an app that doesn't physically exist, right? It's kind of a funny thing that we put so much stock into.
Right. And one that we don't own ourselves, that can go away tomorrow, that we're always reminded of. And so I try to remember that too. I've seen so many people lose their accounts overnight. And so I try to really keep that in perspective of like, it's great to have 17,000 followers. And if they all go away tomorrow, what are you going to do about that?
Correct. Exactly. Well, the nice part about it, I'd like to think with the industry that you're involved in, real estate, is that, yes, social media is great. However, you aren't in an industry that's completely dependent on whether or not you have an Instagram, right? Like you said, like if Instagram shut down tomorrow, you'd be like, oh, shoot, okay, that changes my marketing plan a little bit. But the good news is you're in an industry, thankfully, that you can keep going, right? Like if social media shut down tomorrow, I'm going to need to go find a new job quickly. Because so much of what I do and for my clients is for them to put stuff on social media or their websites, right? Type of thing. So it just depends on those of us that have decided to hitch our flag or hitch our horse to that wagon, right? Type of thing, and say, okay, we're going to ride it and hope for the best and see what happens, right? So talk to me a little bit about real estate as a whole, right? I'm always fascinated. Was real estate always the plan for you, or how did you get involved? Because very few realtors that I've met wanted to be realtors.
Yep, that's true. Nope. I was a first grade teacher and I did not last long in that field. That was that was my life plan. I thought that, I loved kids and I thought I was going to do that forever. I came from a family, my mom was a teacher. And so I saw how that fit into our family as I grew up, and I loved school as a kid. And so it just kind of made sense. And then when I got there, and I started teaching, I realized that teaching had changed so much and it wasn't like it was when I was little. And so I taught for 2 years and was absolutely miserable. And that was before I had kids myself. And I just kept thinking to myself, there's no way that I will be able to have a family of my own, because I was going home I was going home after a day of teaching and I was going to bed at 6 o'clock at night because that was just how drained I was. And I was sleeping until 6:30 the next day. Like I needed 12 full hours of sleep to recoup from teaching. It was that draining. And so I knew it wasn't sustainable. And so I kind of hopped around a little bit. I went to Skyward, which is a corporate educational software company here in Stevens Point. Their headquarters are here. And at the time, a lot of the teachers that were leaving the industry were going there because it was kind of this thought process of, oh, we're still staying in the teaching industry, but we are not. It was full-blown corporate America. You're punching a time clock. And it was even worse. It felt like jail. It was like if I needed to go to the doctor, I had to ask permission from my boss, and that was even worse. And so I was like 28 years old and I did not know what I wanted to do when I grew up. And at the time we were getting ready to sell our house, and I thought, real estate has always been in the back of my mind and we're getting ready to sell our house. And so like, what's the worst that happens? If I get my real estate license, at least I will know what we're going through as we go through this process. So I got my license, and I got my license at 30. So I started a brand new career at 30. I felt like I was totally behind when I was comparing myself to all my peers. But now when I look back on it, I'm glad that I went through all of that discovery in my 20s so that now I'm very, very clear on what it is that I want to do and how I want to do it. And so I started real estate at 30 and I'm super, super happy there now. And even my real estate career in and of itself has ebbed and flowed because real estate is kind of a open book. Like everyone can do it differently. There's like the old guidelines of how to do it. But in the last 3 years, I would say social media has completely changed the game. There are so many people who are now using Instagram solely to build their businesses. And now they're teaching courses on how to build real estate businesses through social media. And that I think is really pushing out the old methods of like the door knocking and the cold calling. And so the industry is really, really changing.
Talk to me a little bit about the real estate side of it as far as how you go about it, right? If someone had never looked at your account and you were going to say, okay, if you want to know how I'm going to use my platform to market or to influence people in real estate, what are some of the things that you found to be successful and that you enjoy doing for promoting the work that you do or the homes that you're selling?
Yeah. So I think there's two different ways to look at it. I think there's some people who do it in a more professional way where they are doing home tours and they're going at it from a very real estate focused lens. And that isn't me. I'm going at it from a relationship based lens. And so I'm going at it from like, this is me, this is my life. And people are getting to know me, getting to know me as a mom, getting to know me as a person in the community, so that when they find themselves in a place to buy and sell, they already know me. And if they like me, they have already decided that they want to use me to buy and sell their home. And so that's how I use it for business. And then of course, yes, when it comes time to sell someone's house, I will, use my creative powers, I guess, to come up with fun reels and things like that. But I also find that it's so inconsistent. Our inventory right now is very inconsistent. So I think it's hard for me to have an Instagram platform that's based solely on listing videos or walkthrough videos because I personally don't have enough listings to just do that. So I come at it from a lifestyle perspective and a hyper local perspective where I'm showing what you can do in our community if you move here. This is what I'm doing as a millennial mom with 2 kids under the age of 7, so that if you move here, this is what your life here could look like.
That's amazing. Yeah. And I think that there's so much more value to that, right? I mean, don't get me wrong, the real estate agents that focus more on the high level listings or live in an area of the country where, yeah, I can show you a $10 million house. Well, that's great.
That works
How many
too.
of those are in Stevens Point, Wisconsin, right?
Yeah.
Like, or in Green Bay even, or La Crosse or wherever, right? Like,
Yep.
it's just, you need to know your market, right? So
Yep.
usually people are moving to Stevens Point for a very specific reason or that area, right? Like not many people have it circled on the map of like, when I get older, I'm going to Stevens Point, right? Type of thing.
Right.
Unfortunately, it's a smaller town, right? You have a very specific reason, and typically it's not for, or sometimes it's maybe to move back to see family or whatever that might be, right? So
Yep.
you taking that approach of, if you live here, this is why this area is great, especially if you have kids. I have 3 kids myself. That would be one of the first things I would look at if I was moving to an area I've never been, to say, okay, I have 3 boys. What's the parks department like? What are the libraries like? The school systems, right? Things like that. Or where can we go get coffee on Saturday? Like that kind of stuff is very important for me and my family, right? To feel acclimated. And then it's like, okay, great. Now let's find the realtor or the people that know this area well, and hopefully they can find us a house that'll fit with what we're looking to do, right?
Yeah.
And I know that there's realtors. One that comes to mind, I don't know if you know her, Amanda Furman in the Fox Valley does a phenomenal job with it, right? She's kind of marketed herself as the Fox City's homegirl, is how she calls it, right? She very much similar. I see a lot of similarities between the two of you of like, these are the local businesses, these are the people, these are the things that make the Fox Cities great, because she loves the Fox Valley.
Yeah.
And it's evident, right? She's not selling it because the Fox Valley is paying her to do it, right? She does it because she lives there. Her kids go to school there. Her husband works. Like, they love it, right? And so that's what you need.
Yeah.
On the flip side of that, if you look from a national level, there's countless realtors, right, that do it at an incredibly high level, like the Shannon Gillettes, the Ryan Sherhans, right? Those guys that are, also in a much prettier area or exposed to a lot more things, right? But do you have those social media, either realtors or just agents in general or content creators that you follow that you say, yep, I try to pull in, inspiration from them, or it's just the goal is to maybe get, half of what they've got right at some point, or like that general feel or concept at times?
I find that I get the most inspiration from people who are not in the same industry as me. So I do follow a lot of other real estate agents. I have made, honestly, some of my closest friends through Instagram, and many of them are fellow real estate agents that I haven't even met in person. And that is really just, for the sake of collaboration and the sake of having someone who knows what I experience day in and day out. But really, where I get my most inspiration and where I really, do my research for my content is typically completely different industries and people with completely different niches. So one of my favorite content creators to follow, her name is Shannon McKinstry. She is a social media manager, and she just shares so much free value. She's constantly doing research on both TikTok and Instagram, and she's just always reporting back on like what's working now. She's sharing trending audios, she's sharing trends that are working. So that's typically where I get my ideas from.
And she does a phenomenal job. Shannon is certainly someone that has kind of cracked the code. She does a lot of speaking and talking. She, I can tease it, I guess, at some point. She'll be a guest on the show here in the next couple of weeks as well, which is really exciting. So
That's
I'm
awesome.
thrilled to have her be a part of this at some point here in the next couple of months as well, which is exciting.
Yes.
But that kind of segues into what I wanted to talk about next, just talking about content directly, right? We talked about real estate overall, but I want to talk about content directly, though. when you look to make content, a lot of your page is carousels and reels, right? But it's a lot of text over B-roll, or sometimes you write in the frame as well, or you're not even speaking to camera all the time, right? As well, like in your mind, what have you found to be maybe, it's hard to say surefire because unfortunately the algorithm changes and people's tastes change, right? But in theory, right, if I was going to say, hey, if you had to create, 3 pieces of relatively surefire content, right? Like what are the styles? What are the moods? Like what have you learned or what have you found that has been successful?
Recently, carousels have been doing the best for me. And I know, in the last few months, Instagram has recently rolled out that feature where you can create carousels right in the app. And whenever Instagram rolls out a new feature, typically they kind of give priority to the people who are using that feature. And so I definitely found that when I started, I really boycotted carousels for a while because it was so annoying to create them when you had to create them in Canva. And if you had a typo or something and you had to fix, it was the worst. And so I just didn't do it. And then when I started creating them in Instagram, which still had its glitches and was still annoying, but I got the absolute best engagement. And I also think that right now I'm seeing it all over, that storytelling is really what is doing the best. And I personally am also finding that the way that I'm enjoying receiving that storytelling the best is through carousels. So right now I just think I like consuming carousels the best, and I think they are doing the best for me as well.
And I've noticed that too, right? Just kind of looking through your page again while we're talking, it seems like the ones that do the best, there's 2 styles that I've noticed, right? It's the same photo 4, 5, 6 times, right? Yeah. But you have different things that you're talking about, or it's, I've got one main photo to catch your attention, but then here's the photos that kind of tell the story, right? It's become a more storytelling flip book, as it were, as you go along. And you can, now that Instagram changed it where you can have up to 20 images as a part of it too, right? You can really take people on a pretty quick journey as long as you don't get too wordy, right? You can kind of tell a quick story or share, my 5 favorite things for this or my 10 for this, right? And you can kind of do really quickly. Plus those also individually are shareable, so people can say, oh, I love that Sarah talked about XYZ coffee shop, great. I share that, maybe that business, and be like, oh, we love it, like she talked about it, right, type of thing. And or housing trend or whatever that might be. What's the type of content that scares you the most to create?
Oh gosh, I wouldn't say that anything really scares me all that much, but the talk to cam is the most intimidating, I think, because it takes the most work to map out the script. It takes the most work in terms of editing and cutting out all of the, blank space or the ums and the breaths and all of that. And it's the longest. And for so long, we've been taught that we want watch time. And so in order to get people to watch our entire video, we need it shorter. So for the longest time, Instagram was pushing the 4 to 6 second videos. So it's really hard for me to put so much time and effort into a video that's going to end up being 60 seconds long, because I have the hardest time believing that people are going to watch it. But when I do those videos, they get just as many views as the 8-second videos. I usually expect that they're going to tank, but they don't. So I want to do more of those. I know I need to do more of those, but that's what I stay away from.
Do you, in your perspective, talking to camera, I think is probably the biggest thing that I hear a lot of the clients that I've, work with, or influencers, or even real estate agents, right? Like half the time when an agent will reach out to me to help them with their content, it's, do I have to talk? Do I have to be on camera? I was like, yeah, you do. I'm like, do you want people to build a relationship with you? Do you want people to feel like they can trust you? Oh, well, yeah, of course. Well, then we need to see you, or we need to talk to you. I had agents for a long time that were like, okay, like, I'm happy to not talk on camera, and I'll do the voiceover. Like I'll do the voiceover of the house tour or the thing. I'm like, that's not the same, right? Like it could
Yeah.
be, I'm like, you don't need to talk for 10 minutes on the house tour, but like welcome the people, show them the house, tell them why it's
Yep.
great, and get out of the way, right? Like you don't have to
Yep.
talk the entire time, but that alone
Yep.
is going to be really important for people and help you feel like you've connected with people a little bit more, right? Or I have
Absolutely.
an agent that I work with that she does house tours, but she really focuses more on like her, like fun or showing off her personality for branding videos, for social media reels, right? Like she finds a lot of them and kind of remakes her own versions of them. But anybody that knows her, she lives in Manitowoc. Everyone that knows her in Manitowoc is like, oh, that's Nicole, obviously, right? Like, but then they feel like they have that relationship with her before they even reach out to buy or sell because they're like, that's my
Yeah.
kind of gal that I want to work with,
Absolutely.
as opposed to maybe someone that's a little bit more stuffy and uppity that they would probably still find them just as nice of a house or whatever, or sell their house, but
Yeah.
it's less transactional and it's more personal.
Absolutely.
I love it. Talk to me a little bit about what 2025 goals you have, because I find that this is the time of year that people are always wondering, always thinking, always processing. You hear all the experts says, oh, you've got to have goals, right? And yes, I think that's important, but it's also important to be realistic about your industry, about what your goals might be in your business, but it might be from a social media perspective, content ways. Like in your mind, how would you define success in 2025?
That's a great question. A big goal for 2025 is I want to sell twice as much as I sold in 2024, but I really need to do it in a way where I still continue to prioritize my health, my peace, do it without the burnout. So if I look at the last 3 years, 2023 was my best year in real estate, but I was completely burned out. So then in 2024, I never really took the time to completely reflect on that. I just kind of ran right into 2024 and I wanted to do even better. And what ended up happening was I think I slowed down in a way that is going to allow me to speed up. So I got really clear in 2024 about how I want my business to feel and how much I really do want to sell and how I can do it in a way that doesn't burn me out. So I feel pretty clear about how I can do that, how I want to attract my clients and the type of clients that I want to attract. And I think that's the key to not burning out is who I'm working with, how many people I'm working with at one time. So I would say that's the big goal is selling more, but not feeling like I'm overcommitted. Because the number one thing for me, I think real estate is an industry that can absolutely rule your life. And same thing with social media. Both of those things have no start or end times. They can be 24/7. And so I want to always keep my family as my priority. And then I also, with getting to burnout, I learned a lot about the nervous system and about regulation, and my nervous system was completely shot. So I need to be better about being mindful of that moving forward.
And that kind of segues nicely into one of the questions that I always ask when I interview people, especially that are in a high demand or creator specific industry, because of my own curiosity, because I'm not an expert at it as well, is when you're not doing the thing that you do, how do you take care of yourself? And what do you use to take care of yourself?
Oh, I love that. Well, one of the greatest blessings that came out of this this kind of local platform and me seeking out local businesses and kind of building them up is I found this local business. It's a community sauna in Stevens Point, and that has completely transformed my health. That has become my number one health routine. I go probably 3 times a week, and it has improved my sleep. It has improved my inflammation. It has improved my anxiety. We're looking at getting one at our house just because I'm there all the time and I've invested so much
We
money
can do this
already.
at our house. Let's save a little bit of money, right?
But it's also like that community aspect as well. Like, even if we have one at our house, I will never stop going because I have made such incredible connections. I continue to like, I'm not trying to, but I continue to get business when I'm at the sauna. Like, I meet clients at the sauna. Like, it just is incredible all the way around for a social aspect, for a health aspect. So that's a big one, but I do make sure that I am having time for myself at least, 3 to 5 nights a week. I take baths, I read, I journal, all the things, all the cliche things, but I have found what I like, and then I do those things.
That's the biggest thing, right? I think that sometimes people get sucked into well, everyone else is doing this. Well, that's great, but does it work for you? Is it realistic for you, right? Like,
yeah.
I think that's what I struggle with the most sometimes is self-care is especially the people like, well, you have to work out like 5 times a week. I'm like, do I? Like, can I work out twice a week? Can I commit or 3 times a week? Like, am I going to detrimentally hurt myself if I'm still working out, but only 2 or 3 times? Like, I don't think so.
Right.
Like, that's a big piece for me, right? Like, I know my life I have a 9-month-old at home right now, and I've got, a second grader and a kindergartner. Like, I know that sleep is foreign object right now, right? Like, and then last night he slept through the entire night and we thought something was wrong. It's the first time he's ever done that. And we were like, my wife and I woke up at 3 a.m. We're like, have you gotten up with the baby? Have you gotten up? No, I haven't. Like, you think he's okay? Like, I think so. Like, it's just, so like, but we're coming out of that, I think, right? In the sense of like waking up every 2 to 3 hours, but like you tack that onto a pretty demanding job and young kids, right? You're like, okay, well, I'm supposed to, work out. I'm supposed to read and journal and do all this other stuff, right? Be like, okay, like after you are a professional and a dad and a husband, how much energy do you really have left, right? Like at that end of the day, right? So finding those days or those moments, right? And be like, okay, like I feel really good today. Like I'm going to go I've got a bike, I've got weights. Like I'm going to go ride the bike for 20 minutes, right? I can check emails if I really need to, whatever, while I ride the bike, but I'm still doing something. I can lift weights while I watch a professional development video about, creativity, whatever it is, right? Like you can find and marry the two a little bit, but it doesn't have to consume you. Because I always kind of push back on the people that like say all these things. I'm like, how many kids do you have? Are you married? Are you in a happy marriage? Right? Like those are like my family will always be more of a priority to me than any amount of success, any client, any dollar figure, anything of that nature. And don't get me wrong, I want to be successful and I want to provide for my family, but nothing will ever be more important to me than them. And for those that prioritize that, I often see a lot of those marital stressors or broken relationships with their kids. And I'm like, was it worth it? Like, I don't think so personally. And I think a lot of other people would agree with me on that, right? Like, you got to do what you said it perfectly. You have to do what is best for you, and you figure that out, and you do your best on a weekly basis because some weeks are just hard, right? Like you just get hit in the face with unexpected things, right? And you're just like, okay, let's figure it out and let's move forward.
Totally. And you know what else has helped me too is like instead of being so rigid of like I have to have 10,000 steps every day, is like if I'm having a really hard day, instead of 10,000 steps, I'm going to have like the best case scenario and the worst case scenario. The worst case scenario is I just do 20 minutes. And like, same thing with journaling. Like on my best day, I'm going to say, I'm going to journal 10 things that I'm grateful for. But if I'm having a hard day and I don't think I can do it, I'm just going to do 3 things. So like, it doesn't have to be so rigid. And in the season you're in, maybe it's not, 5 days a week, maybe it is 2, but it's like we can grow through the seasons that we're in. A little is better than nothing, but you're right, keeping the family as the priority. And then we work everything around that.
Exactly right. And it's I don't know if you've read the book Atomic Habits. James Clear, the author, talks about that 1% better every day, right? Like that habit stacking. And I'm like, great. Like that's my goal, is to be 1% better tomorrow than I was today, right? Like that means that I, did something Every time I turn my camera on, every email I send, every time I do an interview, right? Like I want to be at minimum 1% better than the last time I did it, right? And I know that compounding consistency over time, I'll be that way, right? I'm sure you look back at your early real estate, interactions or content that you posted to fast forward to today, you're probably more than 1% better, I'd hope, right? Than when you started, right? Type of thing. So just allowing yourself that grace and saying, you got it, you're doing good. Like just keep going forward.
Totally.
I love it. Before we close, I would be remiss if I didn't give you a moment to plug why Stevens Point is a must visit. Summer will be here in a couple months. Why do people need to go to Stevens Point?
Oh my God. I always tell people, so I work with Marshfield Clinic to do doctor tours as they bring doctors in for interviews, and then I bring them on community tours. And I always tell them that Stevens Point has to be like, you have to feel it. Like you can't really see it. Like it just has this sense of community that like when you spend even just a weekend there, like you can feel it's this place that you feel that if you lived there, and if God forbid you experienced a tragedy, you know that the community would rally around you and that you would have people dropping off meals on your doorstep and that you would have people showing up for you, people that you've never even met before. It's just a really magical place, and it's magical in the most simple way. We have this really beautiful park along the river where we have live music every Thursday in the summers, and we have food trucks that come out, and there are kids running around barefoot, and there's a path that goes along the river, so people are just kind of walking freely, and there's music, and it's just the most magical way to spend a summer evening in Stevens Point. And I think that is the most, like the best way to encapsulate living in Stevens Point is those Thursday nights at the river. And it perfectly sums up our community.
I love that. They need you on the tourism board. Holy smokes. That was a great pitch. I'm like, we're moving. We're going to Stevens Point. Like, let's go. I love it. That's amazing. I've been to Stevens Point a handful of times, just mostly for passing by stuff, right? Or you're stopping on a bathroom break or a one-day event type of thing. But I've known people that have gone to the college there that have nothing but rave reviews about, their 4 years in Stevens Point, or family that lives in the general area. And they're like, it's a great area to be in. So it's obvious that you have a passion for it. It's obvious that you care deeply about the community and that you are well-versed in it as well. So Sarah, if people want to get a hold of you or learn more about what you do, what's the best way for people to do that?
Instagram is the best way. I'm at sp.happening.
Fantastic. Well, Sarah, thank you very much for taking the time today to be a part of the podcast. Would love to come to Stevens Point at some point and get a tour with you and just, see the city, right? That would be a ton of fun.
Please do.
Would definitely love that. And I appreciate you taking the time out of your busy schedule to be here.
Yeah, thanks so much for having me. This was great.
My pleasure. My pleasure. A big thank you to all of you for tuning in as well for another episode of Iconic Creators. Reminder, Spotify and Apple Podcasts are the best places to check out the show. We'll be back next week for another episode of Iconic Creators. We'll see you next time.
How to have fun, anytime, anywhere. Step 1. Go to chumbacasino.com.
ChumbaCasino.com. Got it.
Step 2. Collect your welcome bonus.
Come to Papa welcome bonus.
Step 3. Play hundreds of casino-style games for free.
That's a lot of games. All for free?
Step 4. Unleash your excitement.
Woohoo!
Chumba Casino has been delivering thrills for over a decade. So claim your free welcome bonus now and live the Chumba life. Visit ChumbaCasino.com.
VGW Group. No purchase necessary. Void where prohibited by law. See terms and conditions. 18+.